Before we get started, I just wanted to call out here that we had a few technical difficulties in this recording. You might notice a few things in the presentation of this where our voice overlaps a bit. Some of the cuts are a little rougher than I would have liked. And at one point, we actually also lost video. Greg was gracious enough to give us his time, but he's recording from overseas, so he had to use a VPN, caused some connection issues. So I wanted to make sure that you all got to hear all the great stuff that he had to say rather than dump it, because I think there's some real gems in here from Greg. So thanks. Hope you enjoy. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the BuzzStream podcast. My name is Vince Nero. I'm your host, and today I'm joined by Greg Heilers. Greg is the co-founder of Jolly SEO. He also has a great podcast, SEO podcast, the Jolly SEO podcast, which you can actually find me on an episode. I think by the time this comes out, it might be live. Greg, how you doing? Thanks so much for joining, man.
Oh, I'm just glad to be here, Vince. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so today we are going to be talking all about HARO-like platforms, pitching quotes for people who are looking for experts. Greg, has kind of built his agency around that type of service, white hat link building. And so, I realized we haven't really talked much about this outside of talking to guys like Peter Shankman or Brett Farmelo, who recently acquired HARO. He's the co-founder or the founder of feature.com. So I thought, yeah, it would be great to have Greg on to talk about it from kind of the agency side and provide some tips and, hopefully people can get something new out of this. But before we get into it, I just want to remind people to like, subscribe, thumbs up, leave comments on this stuff, engage with it. The more you do, the more I can have great guests like Greg on. So, Greg, let's start kind of the beginning. I want to understand from you, you take on a new client, right? What are kind of prerequisites that are needed if you want to start pitching a website through a quote
Yeah,
platform?
so there's two main things you want to consider. Unfortunately, these are actual deal breakers. So business niche and figurehead. So what I mean by that is your business in an industry that journalists are looking for input from. And if I need to be explicit, it's very challenging if your business is in cannabis, gambling, sex. These are really hard niches unless someone is explicitly looking for an expert in that niche. If you're looking to do a lot of outreach, there just aren't that many opportunities where people, to be honest, are looking for you. The other thing is your figurehead. Typically, a journalist is looking for a C-suite, a CEO, CMO. This is because when we as consumers are reading, we want to hear from an expert. And so, no offense to any of us who have worked our way up. If you're still working your way up, it's not often you get to see us quoted when we're still the specialist or even the manager.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. And I'm wondering too, maybe this is something we could circle back around to is kind of like building that authority, because I do think that will probably come for a lot of people is kind of realizing like, what do I do in these cases? I mean, I guess, are you specifically turning down people like that, or are there ways to kind of get around not being an expert? Are there kind of like lower tier sites that you can, use to build
Nailed
that
it. Yeah.
expertise? Yeah.
I just today we're welcoming a client who the marketing manager is the person who we have the privilege to represent. And with that, it would be foolish of me to promise them the moon and say, USA Today, Forbes, New York Times. So instead, we're starting at mid tier here, and we hope, to paraphrase you there, to build authority, and maybe we get either permission from her employer to use an elevated title, or we get enough recognition that journalists can see the portfolio, the external credentials, if you will.
Yeah. So I should probably step back a little and kind of help users or listeners. We talked about this right before, but I want listeners to understand kind of your toolkit of quote platforms, because it isn't just HARO, and it sounds like you're also, looking at things like journal requests. So Yeah, tell us a little bit about kind of the workflow and some of the
Yeah,
platforms.
I was a history major in college, so without getting too much into the history of the space, today, mid 2025, it's splintered. Used to be HARO. The reason we use the term HARO, everybody recognized that term. It really used to be more or less just one big player in the space. Peter Shankman founded HARO. And then over the last few years, it's splintered. And today, I'd recommend people try several different platforms. We can get into the pros and cons of each or keep it high level. But we use about 7 different of those platforms alone, in addition to direct outreach, if with a couple different tactics just within direct outreach. So it takes a lot.
Yeah, well, why don't you name some of the platforms? I mean, I think it's probably worth having people kind of understand what's out there and what's available for sure.
Totally. So for folks just beginning and you don't have any budget, but you've got time for free today, you can go to sourceofsources.com. That's from the original Helper Reporter founder, Peter Shankman. And you can go to helperreporter.com. That is the original platform revived by Brett Farmelo. If you have a little bit of budget, I recommend you try the platform Brett started called featured.com. You'll get better conversions. So you'll get, meaning more bang for your buck on your time invested, although it's a software. And then for those who maybe have an in-house writer team, actually, one more free one for you, not too many people know about. If you're okay with just marketing niche, helpab2bwriter.com is an awesome platform run by Jimmy Daly's Superpath. And we're fans of all the freemium. We don't outgrow them. They're still awesome platforms. But if you do have more budget, featured and then quoted.com is the one you'll hear a lot of people talk about. That's QWOTED.
Yeah, yeah. There's another one I wanted to give a shout out to I just learned about called Press Pulse. Have you checked out Press Pulse at all?
PressPulse.ai.
Yes.
Yeah, really like Elvis. He's awesome. And what he's doing is aggregating. We did that at our attempt called pitchresponse.com. It still lives on. We don't run it. That was where I first really got to know some of the people on your team, Vince, at BuzzStream, because they were just very generous with their time trying to advise it. Turns out I'm not a software guy, so we just came back into our lane over here. But Elvis is really neat, worth looking up. Press Pulse is neat.
Yeah, and another one I want to shout out is Journo Finder. I know they have I'm just thinking about back to a post that I wrote once HARO shut down initially before it was revived. I wrote a post about kind of the alternatives, and I was researching a couple of these. Journo Finder has something that kind of digs into journo requests, which is, a popular hashtag in the UK. Based off of some of the research that I did, we scraped uh, hashtags and kind of geotagged all where the tweets were coming from, and feels like hashtag journo finder, or sorry, hashtag journo request is primarily UK based. Let's talk, Greg, too now about kind of you said you kind of do some direct pitching. So is that looking at hashtags like journo request?
So that for us, we do that with the hashtags with Twitter. We're we're actually seeing better conversions off of that than we thought we would get. We're a little late to the party, to be honest, but we primarily with our direct outreach is more like what's popular, a popular phrase, digital PR, right? So it's a lot more intensive. You're doing research on data, you're asking clients to publish that data on their site, and then you're contacting journalists to say, look at the awesome data we have. Would you consider citing us when you use that data in your next article? And you've got to have a slightly different tech stack for that, and definitely a different skill set for that. Even I, just to be honest, that's not my wheelhouse. We have a different specialist for that. I'm more like the journalist outreach lane.
Yeah. So do you do any type of outreach where you are, hey, let me back up. I've heard a lot of people, this is something I never really did, but say you join or so you get a new client in a specific industry. Some people recommend going out and finding journalists and kind of proactively building relationships, presenting yourself as an expert rather than responding to a request directly. And obviously responding to a request is the most direct route because you're giving them something that they need. But in this strategy, I do like it because A, it builds that relationship, which you can kind of nurture over time, but then also it's a proactive approach, right? It's something that you could do no matter what, regardless of if the journalist is asking for it. Have you tried that? Do you recommend something like that?
Yeah, I mean, you're they're two different approaches really. With the journalist outreach platform, it's a little more short-sighted. You're not you can definitely nurture those relationships, but it can feel a little more transactional. You know, they're looking for something today or tomorrow. With what you're describing, you're more looking to establish a relationship. And I know we really got into that on our podcast, which was awesome. You gave some great tips for that. So it kind of depends what you're going for here. And just being honest, I think a lot of people want the win today. So that's why, and I'm myself included, right? So that's why we've gravitated towards the platforms, but I respect and there's a lot of value to be had in the longer term of reaching out, introducing yourself without a short-term ask to be in their Rolodex for the future.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I always worry about and I would love to hear your take because you've built an agency that to do this, you and your co-founder, but you know, for a quote platform, it feels like it's more of a opportunistic strategy where, there might be times when it's hard to fit your client into an ask, right? So like in those cases, are you just out of luck, right? Like, are you not going to hit your client goals that month? Like, how does that work? Talk me through kind of maintaining expectations and like, yeah, that concern of working within kind of an opportunistic model like that.
Yeah, I think that's a fair word to use, opportunistic, and there's no like negative connotation. This goes into your philosophy on link building in particular, but even PR in general. Everybody has a different standpoint on this one, or there's a spectrum rather. So some of our clients only want to be seen in articles on websites directly related to their business. And some of our clients are looking to establish a broader footprint. They want more awareness and they also want more recognition from search algorithms to know that their brand is an entity out there in the world. Not necessarily hyper focused on this one topic, but just that exists out there in the world. So it depends, almost going back to our previous short versus long. So if you are the former, you are going to find that if your business is in finance, marketing, or tech, you're going to have enough opportunities. However, if your business is outside of that, in general, it's going to be a little sparser out there for you. Maybe home services can get by, maybe some lifestyle businesses can get by, but I'm talking about for say you want to get 5 wins a month, which is like our standard request from people. Uh, it'll be tough if you're very niche and you want very niche. So what we like our clients to be open-minded to, and what we coach our writers on doing when a client is open to this. So what I would say to the audience, if you're open to being on things that aren't directly, like I'm Jolly SEO, there isn't enough to go around for just SEO. If I want Jolly to grow as a brand, so we leverage the figureheads expertise beyond just the business's expertise. So as the co-founder, I hopefully know something about business management, something about finances for the business, something about marketing. I know something about HR, navigating economic changes, all kinds of things. And if you really want your personal life too, but we don't do that for clients. So that's how we navigate that. There's a great example, Vince, and then I'll be quiet. When I was creating a course on this a few years ago that's for free now on our site, there's an example in there of someone who runs a thank you notes business. And very understandably, she reached out with a pretty classic question I get, which is like, I can't find anything that I can comment on. What do I do? And so that's the answer for her is, hey, if you only want to talk about thank you notes, you're right. There actually is nothing. If you're open to talking about your business owner experience, your experience serving customers, your experience creating art, there's actually a lot.
Yeah, I mean, in this age of AI, as we kind of transition now into things like, AI mode and people searching ChatGPT for things, I think people are going to start, and I'm just kind of talking off the top of my head here. I haven't given this much thought, but I'm wondering if there are more opportunities than people think when you get into relevance. And I'd be curious to see, in the future, as tools get more sophisticated, if like Haro or Quoted, like has something like that I know Haro is not necessarily a platform, but if any of these platforms start rolling out like, hey, you are an expert in this. This is 90% relevant to you or whatever. Because I do totally agree with you, Greg. Like there's always going to be that like, are you doing this for search or are you doing this for brand, right? And obviously those two things should play together, but there are some times where it's just, that's what the brand goal is, the given moment. So, okay, I'm gonna get into this next one. I mean, it kind of leads into the next piece of what we're just talking about, but like, is every opportunity a good opportunity? What do you feel in your gut for this?
First of all, we have some very black and white, some clear lines. We don't talk politics. We don't talk religion. We don't talk anything in their personal lives. To be honest, in the early days, we 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 talked things about like personal lifestyle choices.
Hmm.
We just got into too many stupid situations with that. We also, for our medical and our finance clients, we don't give specific medical advice or financial like investing advice. These are all ways that we can make a negative brand impression for our clients. And so, we've gotten over 25,000 wins and we've had, I'd say probably 10 over the years now where they were like, it's more of a damage control than even like that wasn't great, but it's unfortunately like on the bad end of the spectrum. So those are the hard lines we've learned through trial and error. I'm not going to say we foresaw all of it. It's through building 25,000 wins. We did. I can now say, unfortunately, not on one hand, but probably on two hands, I can count that. And then, aside from the extremes, we actually, the way that we configure our writer team now, we have a lot of training for our writers, and it's more of a pool rather than they're dedicated and they're assigned certain things. So they are empowered to make this judgment call. They're also incentivized to focus on what is actually going to get a win. So they're using to make that judgment call. They're using that balancing back to that first question. What is the business qualified to answer and what is the figurehead qualified to answer? And you'll often see it in so these journalist outreach platforms, they have a title, a summary, and they have a detailed query or opportunity. And so you'll see either in the title or in the detailed query, and if not there, explicitly in the requirements, exactly who the journalist wants to hear from, or if it's a range. And so that's what we're triangulating. What's the business have to offer? What's the figurehead have to offer? What is the journalist looking for? Do we fit? If we don't, there's over 500 opportunities a day. We can find enough for most clients, except the most aspirational targets. Some of them, yeah, there's not always enough.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, again, I don't think people realize how many opportunities are coming through. Brett from Haro said something like, people are connecting with journalists every minute on the platform.
I believe it. Yeah.
Yeah, which is wild. Well, so let's get into two other things here. This idea of kind of like a quality check that you do. You mentioned, a couple of these prerequisites. Can't be a gambling site, can't be, a sex site, that sort of thing. And I assume that's kind of like getting into like the bad neighborhoods, right? Where it's like they might be linking to other poor sites, which can decrease the value of that backlink. So, Greg, you talked about kind of some of the quality checks that you do and the evaluation, the site evaluation that you do, looking at kind of the neighborhoods that these sites are in. But walk me through kind of your whole process of evaluating whether or not a site is worth you providing an expert quote for.
Yeah, absolutely. So first, remember we're a service provider, so you don't need to set the bar as high as we do. Uh, I think you certainly could set it much lower and still interact with quality sites. So that disclaimer out. Uh, we have a couple different tiers. One of our tiers, for example, we use Ahrefs as a minimum domain rating 50 and organic traffic 1,000. Another tier is a minimum organic traffic 50,000 and domain rating 70, right? So at that upper tier, certainly not every month, but people are really hoping to see the big names, the Forbes or USA Today. We tell them they will average 1.5 million organic traffic and domain rating 80. And then we have that other tier for people who are okay with averaging 100K organic traffic and 70, 75 domain rating. So it depends on what you're targeting. Back to our relevancy question. Either way, we are in the SEO space. Most people are after the do follow. Actually, really interestingly, in the age of LLMs, brand mentions are seeing I wouldn't even say resurgence, but I would say in our space for the first time, getting some importance in the eyes of even our clients. So
Yeah.
I would consider at least going for those opportunities where you're not 100% sure there's a link. But the way you can do that is one of two ways. Alongside DR and traffic, we have a metric called link type. So like the website's backlink policy. And you can do that for us since we do enough volume. We just look when we get a new win from a domain, we update our database with the latest link type that we got there. Unlinked mention, socials, do follow, no follow. Or if you're just starting out or you don't have a database like that, just pop open their website, go to their blog category and look at 2 to 3 articles and see, when they quote somebody, do they give them a link and what type is it? And so those are 3 basic criteria we would use. If we're talking about qualitative, additionally, we typically don't pitch websites whose business model is not a service or product. It's maybe AdSense or affiliate. These websites, again, if you're doing outreach for yourself, may have value. These are just things that we have to have certain standards when we're serving.
Yeah, I really like that. I mean, kind of categorizing that way. That is something that I also have pitched. I mean, I think what you get into, the types of sites that you're talking about tend to be providing or selling and purchasing links. They kind of just exist to be that link purchase platform. But we don't need to get too far into that. I want to get into 2 more things before we let you go, Greg. And one of them is, with this resurgence or renaissance of like brand mentions, right? Unlinked brand mentions, I should say. It seems like more and more people are gravitating towards platforms like this. I don't know. Have you seen that it's been harder to cut through the noise? And I'd also love to know your tips for cutting through the noise because I'm assuming journalists, regardless of if more people are using the platform, I'm sure journalists get a lot of responses.
Yeah, absolutely. So there is more noise. Then again, people just like SEO has been dead many times. People have said the HARO space is dead many times. So yes, I think that, Peter, when I interviewed him, Brett, when I've interviewed him a couple times now, uh, they're cognizant of the AI spam issue. They're working to address it. If you notice, at least as of mid-year, Helper Reporter has a little 64-bit encoded uh, statement attached to each opportunity that's a message to
Oh, nice.
LLMs saying, if you're an LLM, please let me know in plain English so that you're an LLM. So these are things that if people are trying to spam the ecosystem, we hope they are filtered out. So it's present and there are attempts to address it, but I wouldn't say that it's not having an impact. It definitely, our conversion rates on outreach have gone down, and that means we compensate our writers more for each win because they're putting in more effort for each win. That said, if you're a genuine outreach, uh, I shouldn't say outreach specialist. If you're genuinely reaching out on behalf of a business owner or you're reaching out for yourself, you're a genuine business owner, one of the best places to prove that you're a real human being, in my opinion, is LinkedIn. There are certainly fake profiles on LinkedIn as well. I've had my frustration with even people impersonating that they work at my company on LinkedIn. But by and large, like featured requires a LinkedIn profile link. And I think more platforms should do that because it's hard to keep a fake person alive on LinkedIn for very long. And you'll see that many journalists require that. The other thing journalists require more and more is to get on the phone. They'll say it's to ask a few questions, but it's really just to verify that you're real and you're really who you say you are. And we ask clients when they join us, someone needs to verify that you're real. Are you willing to get on the phone? And even though we're a fully hands-off service in most cases, if it's a great opportunity, maybe you need to give them 4 minutes of your time so they can feel safe including you so that their audience can trust them.
Yeah, I really love that. I hadn't even thought of that, and I haven't seen that either with the phone calls, but that makes total sense to me. And it's funny, just a little anecdote. I did get a fake author. So I did this post about LLMs who are suing, sorry, publishers who are suing LLMs for using their information. And the crux of the post was like, should you be pitching to these sites if they're like, if your goal is to get into LLMs, should you be pitching these sites because are they, going to end up winning this lawsuit and be not included in the LLMs? It's a long shot for sure, but I got some insight from I think I did this just on Twitter. I did my own little journal request and I was like, I'm looking for lawyers to comment on this. I want to understand how long this process would take. Lawyer reached out, gave me a quote. I didn't do a great job of vetting them at all. And it was, I was like,
You got
I'm
caught.
gonna I got caught. And the signature looked good enough. It was a real law firm. That was as far as and the person worked at that law firm, but that was as far as I went. So yeah, a couple weeks later, someone from the law firm was like, "Hey, you got to remove this. This isn't a real person that works here anymore." Blah blah blah. So yeah, it was a fake person, and I'm sure, and I think Brett did from HARO. So to piggyback off of this, so there was this kind of mini scandal of like these fake quotes kind of going around. I believe it was Reach PLC, and I'm blanking on the main site that really uncovered this. But regardless, this has become, to your point, this has become, aside from kind of the AI, pitches, AI generated pitches, has become a thing in the industry of people worried that these are fake experts, right? You just create a person, and the Press Gazette was able to kind of, highlight some of these fake people and reach out to them and to determine that they weren't real. So this is a concern. I would love to hear from your end too, if this has become anything. I mean, is it just a matter of providing as much as you can to show the author that you're a real person? I mean, are more people hesitant, tentative nowadays?
Yeah, we actually have a number of writers on our team that have been on the other side as well. Kind of in any profession, there's a few different angles in the industry. And so in our industry, we have people who do outreach to the media. And we also have people who do the outreach who have worked on the publisher side, who have received the pitches. And so while that's a fine line for them, they need to navigate professionally if they want to continue to wear both hats. They have advised us that they do increasingly prefer to do the outreach themselves, not using the journalist outreach platforms. They'll go on LinkedIn and headhunt for their next quote. They'll reach out to the expert. They'll cherry pick the experts they want and reach out
Interesting.
to them. Yeah, and so that how do you navigate that when you're on our side? That's one that I'm still mulling over, to be honest, if we lose those. But we've worried about losing helper reporters since the day we started doing this, basically. So it and it did disappear for a bit there. So I think the
Yeah.
appetite is there. And as a consumer, I want more rigorous, increasingly rigorous, because we all have to worry about deep fakes in the future. And so, yeah, it's a really good question. And I don't know that there's one really strong answer right now, unfortunately. So there's a few approaches to it.
Yeah, and I'm realizing I didn't really finish my thought in my last ramble. Brett Farmelo from Featured, one of the things he said was the onus is kind of on the journalist, I think. And I think that is very fair. You know, these platforms are getting a lot of pressure for, but they can only do so much, right? Like they can put in safeguards, and this is exactly kind of how he framed it. They can put in safeguards, but at the end of the day, it is on the publisher, the journalist, the stupid guy on the other end like me who to really, vet where you're getting your information. There might be cases where you learn the hard way, like myself, and obviously it wasn't a huge deal. I could swap it out, barely anybody cared, but there might be cases like, a big publisher where they get called out, and that can have a big impact, and you clearly don't want that to happen to your client. Okay, last thing I really want to understand from you is, and kind of along the same lines here with all this noise, do you have any tips for specifically kind of formatting your response to a query or crafting it? I know you have a great team of writers. What are some of the things that you think they would say to stand out, to cut through this noise? Not only to show you're not AI, but also just to provide a great quote to make sure yours gets picked.
Yeah. So the format does vary by platform, and some of these aren't traditional SaaS platforms. They're just email newsletters like Help a Reporter and Source of Sources. So if let's deal with the email first, because that's really fully customizable on your end. You definitely want a sign off that, going back to what we were just discussing, includes a link to your LinkedIn, but not even about verification, also includes a link to your headshot that's hosted online. This is just something that people include
Oh.
in articles from time to time, and it's nice to have it there for them. I also would say put your brand name hyperlinked to your website. You're making this nice and easy for them to copy paste into their article, but also put the naked URL. By that, I mean like fully spelled out URL next to it. Sometimes they just really want to see it spelled out, literally. Uh, so, in terms of subject line, I've actually modified my take on this based on feedback from Daniel Burstein at Mech Labs. He was on our podcast recently. So, traditionally, I would say, and I still use, a framework that's something like, and don't use the same subject line for hundreds of pitches, but something like a business, like 15-year business owner on, and then their topic matter, right? Just to show my relevance and my authority in as few words as possible as it relates to their pitch. Daniel's take actually was to copy paste their request title. We would call it the summary in Source of Sources and HARO speak, into your subject line. Because from his perspective as the journalist publisher, he searches his inbox for that phrase that he put into the system, because his inbox is littered with pitches. And so when he's looking for the next three quotes to put in that particular article that he's writing, he just searches for that exact phrase and looks from those. So it's a very interesting take. I personally don't have enough data on that one, but I wanted to share that because, hey, his opinion is worth more than mine, I think, in this context for sure. So that helps. Um, and then the other thing, I love this phrase that a very early writer, Nathan Collier, who was actually a mentor for me in like content marketing, he called it copy pastable. We've been using it ever since. So your writing style here, remember that us Americans, our average reading level is like third grade. Maybe we're up to fourth now. So it is still internet style. But also remember that the person you're pitching here is a freelance or in-house writer. They've got a publishing schedule they need to keep up with. And they are looking for you not only to cater to their audience, but to make their life easier. So what you want are copy pastable is the phrase that we used. You want something that the writer can literally highlight, Control C, open their GDoc, Control V. You don't want something with a lot of editing necessary. So we do that through maybe two ideas in a pitch, each one with a header that's bolded that sums up that section. And the sections are like 2 to 3 sentences, and the sentences are like 10 to 15 words. And going back to the very beginning, what types of outreach are we doing? Remember that they already have the article idea, they've already put the request in the system. Whatever you do, please don't send a pitch that says, "Hey, I'm so and so, let me know if you want my thoughts." They want your thoughts. That's all they want. They don't want to reach out to you. So you just need to give them exactly your thoughts that they are going to copy paste into their article. And you can put a nice, genuine, please feel free to let me know if you have any follow up questions. And they very well might, but definitely answer the questions that they've already asked. And so that's my best tip for email. And with platforms, it's even easier. You've already set up your profile, so they've already got the other resources I started out with. And now you just need to get straight to the meat, that copy pastable quote. And so that's my best tip. I'd just like to say, Vince, if it's okay, one thing that I think more publishers need to be aware of, and just sympathetically to more outreach people, if English isn't your first language, you're getting conflated with AI a lot. And so if
Hmm.
publishers are thinking that everything they're receiving is AI, it also could be true in this case, but you may also be receiving a genuine pitch from an outreach person who is a professional, is working really hard to communicate to you in their second or third language. And I have seen, I'm in China right now. I've seen this uh, interacting with people from around the world. It's hard to communicate in a second language. So, for whatever that's worth, I just wanted to throw that in and encourage everyone out there who's
No,
still trying.
yeah. I mean, last question, I promise I'll let you go. I mean, does that mean you, in some cases, would reach out on behalf of someone just to show, like, if you have a client, for instance, who ESL, is it worth reaching out on behalf of them rather than having them pitch, this is from me versus I represent so and so from this?
Yeah, well, that's actually a question we definitely should cover. Is like, who are we reaching out as? We are ghostwriters, just to be clear. And some people have an ethical standpoint against that, and I respect that. And to that, I say, uh, President Obama had a ghostwriter. If you're not a left, President Trump has ghostwriters. Like everybody uses ghostwriters that is trying to le- use leverage to magnify their awareness and authority. And it's okay if you disagree with that. But definitely knowing that stigmas, stereotypes, racism straight out exists, um, I think it's very okay to use a nickname. Uh, like I don't use Gregory. And in China here, I don't use my English name, I use my Chinese name. But at the same time, I'm not pretending that I'm actually Brandon something when I'm reaching out for myself. But just to be clear, yeah, when we do outreach for our clients, we are ghostwriting. We really do, and so I think that that's perfectly acceptable. Now, to pull that off, if people want to understand technically how we execute that, is we use, in the case of email newsletters, domain hosted email addresses from their website. These clients, when they're signing up with us, they're signing a contract that grants us permission and indemnifies us for any potential transgressions. That 10 I mentioned over the last 7 years. So it's a professional service. I think it's really okay to represent someone not just on behalf of, but directly. That is a personal, subjective call to make, though, and I respect that not everyone's on board with that.
And are you getting like sign off on these quotes before you pitch them, or that is part of the contract?
Yeah, that's a great question. We do have clients who require that. These are typically enterprise, sometimes public companies. As you can imagine, they've got legal hoops to jump through. On the other side, you've got platforms like Quoted, which that's a requirement of theirs. Uh, like I said, everyone has a standpoint. So if I'm allowed to represent my own for a moment, I would just posit that the PR agencies that say they're reaching out on behalf of someone and this is a quote they authorized, that doesn't guarantee that that person wrote that quote or saw that quote. They just get to say that because they're
Yeah.
called PR and not
Right.
SEO. So that's my own opinion. It doesn't mean much out there, I understand, but yeah, our style is ghostwriting. Most clients, the ones that really see the value in us, they want it to be hands off. However, we do have a couple enterprise, and we always welcome them. And that's a different framework for how we serve them. It's more of a piecework kind of service where they're paying per pitch we write. And that's fine too. It's just a shared understanding that I'm going to be releasing a new study later this year on the whole like early bird gets the worm philosophy. We'll see. There's a big belief out there that if you're late to the game, you're not going to have as good a chances.
Yeah, yeah, I'd be really interested to hear that. I mean, yeah, Greg, we could go on, I think, and talk about this stuff. Look into your crystal ball for me. Is this HARO type outreach something that continues to work in an AI age?
I say yes with unforeseen modifications to it, at least for me. My crystal ball gets murky when we say, what is the exact form? Because, as I said, for 7 years or so, ever since this became the only way I support my family, my co-founder, and a lot of people on our team, the way that we all live harmoniously and serve our clients, it we've been paranoid about that on and off. And then indeed Haro disappeared for a bit there. But as one of our former teammates, Colin Palfrey put it, he's like, there's always going to be this need. It's just going to look a little different. And so that is what we've seen. There is a need. There is a need also for more scrutiny around the quotes. Again, I'm a consumer too. I have kids. I'm concerned about deep fakes and the fourth estate's integrity. So I think these things matter and they're good questions. I don't see a future where we don't, as humans, look at brand as their own entity and also individuals, uh, and have some kind of trust signal associated with those. And I don't see how publishers wouldn't be looking, if we just want to talk about in SEO terms, EAT, right? But in social terms, like trust signals, they're kind of integral to who we are. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think it exists. I think we're going to have to adapt many more times.
Yeah, I totally agree. And well, Greg, this is like I've kept you here for way longer than I think you agreed, so I really appreciate it. I had, several last questions for you, so I appreciate you sharing all this knowledge with us. People can check you out on your website, just jollyseo.com. Is that correct?
Yes, no, and I really appreciate it, Vince. I like you. I could stay longer. We'll let the people go, and maybe I can come back someday.
Yeah, yeah. So check out Greg. He's on LinkedIn, but also check out his podcast. If you have questions about this kind of stuff, leave comments. I'm sure Greg would be more than happy to answer. Leave them in YouTube, the LinkedIn, Spotify even has comments now. So, Greg, thank you again so much for your time, and thank you all for listening.